Why do you think that so many of us have such an obsession with being productive?
Wow. These kind of causal questions, I always feel like you can answer on so many levels, right? So this could be an answer about the Protestant work ethic, about sort of Anglo-American culture and the religious idea that to try to get on the right side of God, you have to spend your life being very industrious. Could be like a capitalism. That is a capitalism argument, but it could be a sort of late capitalism argument about how we feel that so intensely today. Could be psychotherapeutic, about how so many of us are raised with some kind of sense that we need to prove ourselves, that we're going to be that we get love from the world through our accomplishments instead of just being ourselves. And then there's kind of more positive and less pessimistic accounts. Like we live in times when it's possible for all sorts of reasons for relatively, ordinary people to do exciting and interesting and meaningful things that, in a very different era they might not have been able to. So it's cool to try to figure out how to make sure that happens.
I think about all of those things all the time. The Protestant work ethic was something I was intimately familiar with, especially in my 20s. I even used to feel guilty if something had gone well, but I hadn't suffered enough in the achievement of it.
Yeah.
Which is a particularly malignant version of what we're talking about.
Yeah, totally. That way in which it is easier, it's actually easier to have it be hard in a sort of upside down way, and that for lots of us, I expect in this respect we are similar, me and you and plenty of people in the audience. It actually feels kind of strange or dangerous or subversive or something to wonder if something could actually be quite easy. I read there was a comment to a New York Times piece that where the comment went viral on social media, which doesn't often happen, where a woman was referring to this concept that she'd come to call maximum economy of ass, about how actually it's the right thing to do to half-ass things. That's where the idea comes from, right? The idea that you should always be spending as much ass as possible in the completion of a task. It just makes no sense, right? It's not how it should work. There should be no shame in the idea that if something comes easily to you, it should feel easy to do, and then you save your efforts and self-discipline for the things that don't come easy.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's so strange. I wonder how much of it is that. I wonder how much of it, again, you hit on another one of my favorites, this sort of weird value exchange that lots of us have with the world, that if only I make myself sufficiently useful and valuable, then I will be accepted. I remember, this is total sort of bro science reflective stuff, but I think in my 20s, what I tried to do was I made myself needed to people. I was useful. I was a very useful intermediary, which wasn't the same as being wanted, but functionally it ended up being the same. And maybe I could have been, but because all I was trying to do was get to being wanted through being needed, I kind of begged the question, and I wasn't ever able to connect with people on a deeper level in any case, because of course all of the relationships, or many of the relationships I had, were transactional, because that was the frame that I'd set them in.
Yeah.
And in whatever, existentially, psychologically, this is the same way that a lot of us relate to the world. If only I can be sufficiently accomplished, then I will be wanted and safe and secure and desired by the people around me. I will be accepted. And if I just reach this particular level of status or wealth or usefulness or acclaim or wisdom or intellect or academic achievement or career goal or whatever it might be, then there we are.
No, totally. That's so well put. And of course, I can almost hear like a certain kind of commentator, critic from the left, basically saying like, yeah, that's because we live in a world that makes you feel like you're going to fall off the bottom of the ladder of society unless you do this, right? So there are these kind of real circumstantial pressures to act that way. But what's so striking is that people internalize it, they collaborate with it,
it's
they do it long after.
Self-generated. I'm my own tyrant here as well.
No, absolutely. And they do it long after and when they're not themselves in a position where that's necessary. And so you end up with this absurd situation where the ranks of people doing really well for themselves in terms of status, upper ranks of corporate life and other areas of the world, are dominated by what's been called insecure overachievers, right? People who are driven by a deep sense of inadequacy and are not having any fun, even though they've supposedly won this very competitive race.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. I've spent a lot of time, especially since moving to America. Austin's a hotbed for people coming through. I was at a dinner a couple of nights ago where Elon Musk was there. So, I'm floating around people that are at the top of totem poles that other people seem to think are important or whatever. And maybe everyone thinks is important. I don't know. But in my experience, it's, if you look at those people as they rise up through this infinite ladder, you're selecting for people, I think, on average, that are more miserable than the average person. I think that the higher you get up, what you're selecting for are the pathologies and compulsions and drives that have caused someone to get there. Yeah. So again, it's kind of begging the effect is happening before the cause, right? Or the cause is what's driving people up to the top of that.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And it reminds me in a slightly different context, because here you're talking about, I think, money and status and things like that, but also just in terms of the old fashioned kind of fame, right? Hollywood, movie, celebrity. I think it's fairly obvious to most of us, if you look closely, that celebrities are those people who lack something that non-celebrities have, right? Which is a ability to not need that kind of adulation. Doesn't mean there aren't some very good actors among their ranks and that they end up spreading lots of pleasure and happiness in the world. But the drive that takes you to the top there is, I think, a lot of the time is filling a void rather than just expressing joy at being alive or something.